I previously did a video on the BabyPorter archetype, but Dark Alakazam wasn't the only Pokemon in this format that could teleport back to the bench. We also had Donphan. Donphan had 10 more HP than Dark Alakazam and was a stage 1 instead of a stage 2, so it's actually easier to get it out onto the field. And Rapid Spin dealt 10 more damage than Teleport Blast did, having the caveat that Rapid Spin also let your opponent switch out with one of their bench Pokemon as well. Unlike Dark Alakazam, you couldn't search for Donphan using Boss's Way, so you would have to find another way to fish it out of your deck. But Donphan served the exact same function as Dark Alakazam in that you would Rapid Spin, deal the damage to your opponent's active, go to your bench, bringing a baby Pokemon as your active. So the next turn when your opponent attacked, they would have to flip a coin to see if it would actually happen. Then the baby has free retreat, so you can go right back into Donphan and do the same thing again, over and over. So although the pattern of attacking and retreating is the exact same as BabyPorter, BabySpinner has some subtle differences that could give it an edge depending on what you're playing against. To start out this deck, we have Phanpy, and Phanpy is just kind of a filler card. It does have Endure if you need to stall for a turn before you can get a Focus Band onto Phanpy, and you maybe have a Donphan ready to go next turn. But then you will also have a full playset of the Donphan. Flail is a pretty decent attack in itself to use while you're building up energy for that Rapid Spin. That's another advantage it has over Dark Alakazam, is that it actually has an attack that is less than 3 energy so that you can use it if for some reason you're getting energy screwed and are having trouble getting anything in your hand. In order to get stuff in your hand, the go-to solution is to have Cleffa. And Cleffa is really just going to be your early game baby Pokemon. There are some better options later in the game for you to swap into using Rapid Spin, but using Eek is really great for just refreshing your hand, stalling your opponent out a little bit, getting all the cards you need for your setup. My preferred baby Pokemon for this deck is Pichu because Zap can really screw over a lot of decks that are big at this time, especially things like Knocklock that usually have 4 Noctowls set up on the bench. You're going to be dealing a consistent 20 damage to them every turn. Pokemon powers were a huge part of almost every big archetype in this format, which makes Pichu a huge threat. Elekid, as always, is a really good option for just getting damage out early turn, or if you're having a rough turn and you're trying to get resituated, like if you had a Donphan knocked out or something, Elekid's just a good placeholder to use Playful Punch, get a little bit of damage out. This deck does use Oddish, Dark Gloom, and Dark Vileplume to lock down trainers as well, which can make it a little difficult using Pichu because you're also going to be hurting your own Dark Vileplume. So in those situations, you're going to have to figure out, is using Pichu going to hurt my opponent more than it's going to hurt me? Can I sack one of my own Dark Vileplume in exchange for knocking out 4 Noctowl in a single turn? This deck heavily relies on draw power, so early game you may end up with basically a full evolution line for Dark Vileplume in your hand, and you just want to hold on to it so that you can actually get all of the trainers out of your hand, and then drop it on turn 3 or 4 and shut your opponent out at that point. Focus Band's going to be for those baby Pokemon. You're not really going to be using them on Donphan that much. It's going to be pretty safe on the bench. Even if it gets double gusted out, you still have a pretty good chance of replenishing your bench or retreating back in before it can get knocked out. The Boss's Way in this deck, only run 2 of them because it's only going to work on Dark Gloom and Dark Vileplume. Bill's Teleporter is probably the most controversial card that's going to be in this deck. Some people say it's garbage because it's got a coin flip. Other people have no preference for it, but I really like it in this deck, especially if you can get those going very early in the game. Just like play 2 of them from your opening hand, you're going to be drawing at least a couple of cards, maybe into some more draw power. That way you can just get everything you need in your hand from the start. Since you don't have that Boss's Way to really get out all the evolution cards that you need, you pretty much want it all in your hand. Goop Gas Attack is going to help early game just to shut down things like Feraligatr. That way they're not getting set up as fast. Even stuff like Meganium, so that those grass decks aren't building up momentum as fast as they possibly could. But Goop Gas can be an absolute lifesaver for this deck early game before you get your Vileplume set up. Resistance Gem is in here just because there's so much in this format that does resist fighting type. You want to make sure if you run into that you can take care of it a little bit. Double Gust is mainly to just trap your opponent. If there's something that they keep retreating to the bench whenever you rapid spin, you know pretty much that they're going to try to build that card up, and you can target it with a Double Gust if you want to, using the same kind of strategy as rapid spin, but you're really just using a trainer for it in order to target specific Pokemon of your opponents. So the main thing you're going to be doing with this deck is trying to get a Phanpy down as fast as you can, ideally in your opening hand. You can use Endure if you have a fear that it's going to get knocked out, since it does have relatively low HP, but you're almost always going to want a Donphan on turn 1. Bill's Teleporter makes that really easy to do. So what else sets this deck apart? Why do I need a BabySpinner video separate from a BabyPorter video? Well, they do have some pretty important differences. The biggest being that BabyPorter is more focused on the long game. You want to stall out your opponent for as long as possible. You're going to be dealing chip damage across the entirety of the game. And BabySpinner is more focused on hitting your opponent hard from the get-go, keeping them on the back foot. You're constantly forcing them to change their active with their bench. You're doing the same, so it's meant to try to keep them off guard. And you also have Vileplume that's kind of locking them down into trainers once you get a few turns into the game, after you've spent all of your draw power to get what you need for your setup and get yourself moving for the rest of the game. Because BabySpinner includes Pichu and Goop Gas attack, you're actually more proactive in keeping your opponent from outspeeding your setup, and you're doing all of this at the same time as dealing a consistent 50 damage per turn starting on turn 3. I've even seen some versions of this deck that run Donphan, Dark Alakazam, and Dark Vileplume lines all at once, pretty much like 4-4-3 of each, and by filling that deck out with Pokemon, you basically leave no room for trainers. It's very focused on just a few trainers that are all draw power. That way you can actually set up Dark Vileplume super early in the game without really hurting yourself, and that version does get you a little bit more coverage, but it is incredibly inconsistent. I tried a few playthroughs with it, and it is fun to play, but it can be really hard to get the right energy that you need, since Rapid Spin requires 3 fighting energy, and Teleport Blast requires at least 2 Psychic, so it could be really hard to get those energy when you needed them. Or if you keep coming up against more and more decks that are focused more on Poke Powers, I would say pretty much take out 2 or 3 of the Cleffa, maybe even all of them, to replace with more Pichu. Magby is another great option as a baby Pokemon. Its Sputter attack can come in really handy while your opponent's trying to get set up, much in the same way that Goop Gas would be helping you. On that note, if you would like to cover Donphan's grass weakness much better against even mirror matches where those Oddishes are going to show up, then you can actually add in 1 or 2 copies of Neo Magmar. Its first attack uses 2 colorless, so it can be splashed into any deck, and it works great with this if you're wanting to cover that grass weakness. If any of you guys out there build BabyPorter and BabySpinner, let me know down in the comments which one you prefer and which one you think actually works better in this format. I myself prefer Donphan and the BabySpinner, but I would love to hear some stories from other people. And as always, just thank you so much for watching these videos, and until next time, bye.